Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CADVC Sound Design webinar, Cockeysville to Baltimore, featuring artist Levester Williams and sound designer Daniel Shields. This event is hosted by the Center for Art, Design, and Visual Culture at UMBC, also known as CADVC, at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Here we hosted the exhibition Levester Williams, All Matters Aside, from September 19th to December 14th of 2024. That exhibition in part presented work created through our experimental pilot program, which is the Exploratory Research Artist Residency program supported by the Big Ideas Initiative of the CAS Dean's Office. The exhibition was accompanied by demonstrations of public projection works created in Baltimore with the collaboration of UMBC MFA students, Bao Nguyen and Nia Hampton, and local artist Sheila Gaskins, among others. And it was accompanied by a booklet with an essay by Michelle Diane Wright. I want to say a few words about the format of today's webinar. This is the book that we are going to be referencing in a moment. Our moderator, Lisa Freiman, cannot be here today, so she's created a virtual video introduction, as well as questions on slides that I will read out loud for our presenters to respond to. I am Rebecca Uchel, the director of the CADVC, and happy to do that. But today I'm going to be vocalizing on behalf of curator Lisa Freiman. The primary objective of this webinar is for it to be recorded, placed online in video hosting on our website in posterity, where it will join a CADVC initiative to publish free, open access, accessible publications like the one you see on the screen, which are supplemented by intermedia resources like the video we're recording today. Right now, for example, if you go to the CADVC YouTube page, you can see the webinar video for Aletha Devane's Spectrum of Light and Spirit. And we are going to be redesigning our site to host videos and downloadable publications like this one in proximity to each other. Much of the work that's discussed in the Cockeysville to Baltimore booklet is time-based. Book designer Andrew Walters created beautiful illustrations of video work, showing sequential passages of the video on the printed or digital page. So this webinar, which focuses on the sonic elements of these works, is really the perfect accompaniment to round out a picture of these works as part of this intermedia publishing initiative. I want to thank the UMBC Division of Research and Creative Achievement, the Maryland State Arts Council, including their Public Art Across Maryland Planning Grant, the Baltimore County Commission on the Arts and Sciences, and the Maurice Berger CADVC Program Fund in support of the exploration of and research into histories of race, representation, and justice in visual culture for their particular support of the programming associated with today's conversation. I'll now introduce Lisa Freiman, after which a short video will play, and then we will get into the questions. For over 30 years, Lisa D. Freiman has served in leadership and curatorial roles in the field of contemporary art. She is a professor of art history at Virginia Commonwealth University's School of the Arts, and she also works as an independent consultant for museums and private collectors. Freiman served as the inaugural director of VCU's Institute for Contemporary Art and co-curated its opening exhibition Declaration in 2018. Between 2002 and 2013, she worked as senior curator and chair of modern and contemporary art at the Indianapolis Museum of Art, where she developed a widely recognized program of contemporary art exhibitions, commissions, acquisitions, and publications. In 2011, Freiman was the commissioner and curator of the U.S. Pavilion for the 54th International Venice Biennial, where her exhibition Gloria featured 6 newly commissioned works by the collaborative Alora and Calzadilla. In 2024, she was the curator of the CADVC exhibition All Matters Aside, featuring a range of works by Levester Williams, including those that we'll talk about today. Freiman earned her PhD in modern and contemporary art history from Emory University and holds a BA from Oberlin College. I'll now turn the virtual and I guess sort of recorded stage over to Lisa Freiman to introduce the program and our speakers today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Freiman, and I am a professor of art history at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. And I also work as an independent curator and arts consultant and have been for over 30 years. Today, I'm speaking to you in my capacity of curator of Levester Williams's exhibition, All Matters Aside, which took place at CADVC last September through December. Unfortunately, it's no longer open, but we're doing this sound design webinar tonight, Cockeysville to Baltimore, conversation with Levester Williams and his collaborative sound design partner, Daniel Shields. And they'll be speaking a little bit about their process of developing the sound for the videos included in the exhibition All Matters Aside, the newly commissioned work, and also some of the work that was created before this exhibition that started way back in 2015, I think. So just a little bit of background about our two speakers. Levester Williams was born in Lansing, Michigan in 1989, and then he moved to Columbia, South Carolina, and grew up with his grandmother. So he's lived in both the North and the South of the United States. He received his Master's of Fine Arts in Sculpture and Extended Media at Virginia Commonwealth University. And that's how I met Levester when he was a first year in the MFA program. And I did a studio visit with him that was really quite remarkable. And I've been in conversation with him and following his work ever since. He also got a master's degree in computer and information technology at University of Pennsylvania and a Bachelor of Fine Arts in art and design from Munich. He has had his work included in exhibitions, not only CADVC, but also at the San Jose Museum of Art, in California, the Namdi Center for Contemporary Art in Detroit, and the Institute of Contemporary Art in Richmond, Virginia. And there have been many others. He also has done residencies at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in Maine, the Vermont Studio Center in Vermont, and the Bag Factory in Johannesburg, South Africa. Daniel Shields is a musician, a composer, and a filmmaker and sound designer. He's also based in Philadelphia. His approach in all media is dialectical, leaning into the conflict and contradictions at the center of our aesthetic, somatic, emotional, and political experiences. Shields earned a BFA in Film and Media Arts from Temple University, and his sound design work has been shown at Icebox Project Space, as well as CADVC. As a composer of electronic music, he's performed all over the world in the United States, and he has participated in a 24-hour performance at Boston's Museum of Fine Arts. He also is a member of the West Philadelphia-based film screening collective, CineSpeak. So the exhibition, Levester Williams, All Matters Aside, was an early career retrospective of his work from the past decade. It included sculpture and video, sound art, and installation. And Levester's research-based practice explores diverse archives, studies of materials, and explorations of charged public spaces, and is vitally linked to an art practice that sees the world as a nuanced spectrum of human identities and experiences that are entangled in designations of race, gender, sexuality, and aesthetics. His artworks are steeped in the significance of their constitutive materials and layered connections to specific sites. So when he uses specific media like Maryland's Cockeysville marble or found objects, He channels their layered associations with experience, history, memory into new contexts and forms. And so many of the works in this exhibition had origins in Williams's 2015 initiated project Of a Beyond, where he started to examine the connections among Billie Holiday's music, Cockeysville marble, and Baltimore's built environments. And during his residency at CADVC, he continued this research into the histories and mythologies of Cockeysville marble, material that's used in the Washington Monument in Baltimore's Mount Vernon neighborhood, as well as the iconic marble exterior steps of local row homes. So tonight we're going to hear from Levester and Dan, and basically it's going to start out with Levester sharing some video clips of projects that were developed for this exhibition. He is going to introduce how he came to explore sound sculpture in his work. And then Dan and Levester are going to speak to the process of collaboration that they engage in, which is a vital and dynamic and reciprocal process. And then they each will be speaking to us about the demystification of sound and also embodied spectatorship. So much to look forward to. I had the pleasure of speaking with both of them last week and can tell you that you are in for a fascinating treat. So I hope you enjoy it and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Levester. This 2.5 minute snippet of this video was played in this installation that was part of the exhibition All Metals Aside. And it was part of this installation of a Beyond 2. And so in the background, as seen this picture, you have the video playing. And it's in this room with, you have two sets of blue fluorescent lights on the other side of the room. And so the room, as you saw, the video itself is not blue, but the cast of the lights itself cast the room into this very blue. And also, you see on the floor these Cockeysville marble stoops. These marble stoops, which I would talk more about the process itself later on, when I get into about my process and collaborating with Dan. But yeah, I wanted to now move to the next slide.
Thank you, Levester. That was really beautiful. I'm so glad we got to hear that in such salient detail. From here on out, until the end, I am representing Lisa Freiman's questions, and the first is on sound sculpture. Lisa asks, sound plays an important role in Of a Beyond too. Can you explain when and why you began incorporating sound into your work and how it has evolved in the past several years? And as a reminder, I will be queuing when it's time to move on to the next question, just to stay on time. But Levester, I'll need you to cue me when you want me to move to the video illustrations that you want to share. Thanks.
Right. Yes. Yes. And so also part of this exhibition was this installation that I did back for my MFA thesis at VCU, the gallery, which you actually see the version of it on the left side, and then my reconfiguration of that same installation at CADVC back in September. I did this like private performance at the urbanicist Frederick Douglass House in Anacostia, DC, which is in Southeast DC. And I took this object, I call it like the cottonmouth, but it's like this hand molded resin, plastic object that I've embedded hand-picked cotton. I actually went to this plantation out in Virginia to hand-picked some cotton, and I embedded on this object. And so I went to Frederick Douglass, his house. I had to get special access to his what was his study. Douglass called it his gallery, and it was like this allusion to Saul Dickinson's book, The Bleak House, when the protagonist of this novel would go into his study and growl. And so I kind of like imagine I imagine Frederick Douglass and him for the drama of being formerly a slave. How did he rest with that pain and negotiate with that pain? And so I took this, like, called this prosthetic or this sculptural object, mounted cottonmouth, and I did a private performance at the gallery inside of Frederick Douglass, his study, and I just growl. And I was thinking, how do I take this private performance and make it into reconfigure it for the gallery, like our gallery? And so I was okay. So gallery sounds the same, and it was like, okay, the sound the same. Also, it's like both the gallery, which is the study of Frederick Douglass, he uses it as a study, and the gallery itself is both studies. Like the gallery is a study, art gallery is a study of form in itself. And so I kind of conflate or combine those two frameworks into the gallery. And in this piece, I growl in the gallery. And I took the recording of that, me growling in the gallery, and I attached transducer to these sculptural objects. And those objects, these sculptures would growl. So they had like the audio recording of me growling in the gallery, as if you walk into the gallery and you hear these objects growl. And I also would slide into a mask under this sculpture that's mounted to a wall, and I would growl with my objects. And it's interesting because I just kind of like what we call like the Frenonian crisis. It's Franz Vernon, the rest in the psychologist who wrote the important book Black Skin, White Mask, or The Worship of the Earth. In Black Skin, White Mask, he talked about in his experience, he went to France and being interpolated, and this white kid saying "Nick Malam," a Negro, like his pointing to Fanon. And in that sense, Fanon talked about being his being displaced, like a body schema working against him and against his agency, him as a subject. And so sounds so I was so like what he said was like, I came into this world to the come like papers like uncover the meaning of things, to be this origin of this world. Now I'm an object among objects. Sound here for me kind of operates to like confront this subject object kind of dilemma. And for me to like trying to perform on my objects, like the performance itself was durational. So I would try to growl with these objects. But of course, I have a limitation. My body has a limitation. I can't perpetually growl with these objects. And so it was like this confrontation between the limits of my body and the limits of the objects who can growl, well, with purpose and perpetuity, with, of course, with maintenance. And so it was like this, like, for me, sound operating this kind of critique of this, what is subjectivity and objectivity.
This brings us to our next question from Lisa to both Levester and Dan on collaboration. How did you and Dan come to collaborate with each other, and what does that process look like as you are developing a new project?
The first screening you saw, 30-second clip, was of my friend Santi, who is a classic trained dancer. And they basically had like a version of what I would talk about Cottonmouth. And I had them drink something caffeinated, like a caffeinated soda. And so that you heard that harsh, there was a sound harsher on the live stream, burping sound. The second clip was of my friend blowing into an encased plexiglass box with the sculpture I made, and it was filled with Listerine, and so he's blowing air into Listerine. So after the MFA thesis with the Gallery, I wanted to create this project, the Sif Truth Bards, to kind of explore like the interiority of subjects. And in this project, I had Dan our first time collaboration where Dan would basically I had the sound. I did the recording of all of the 4 videos in my studio, and I captured the sound as is. So I captured the sound that was of this in the studio on set through your regular like boom mic, and I asked for Dan to basically to digitally process that audio, and that's the start of this kind of collaboration and how it just start. It definitely involves way more. Dan becomes more involved, and which we talk about in the next few slides now.
Dan, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I think that about captures it, because I think that I had sort of initially started to become interested, maybe with the growl, because I think that Levester had designed a couple of speakers for the actual installation, and that was initially what pricked my interest, was just Levester being curious about how to wire these things. So that's what got us talking, and then I think, yeah, you don't get so much of a reminder about the stuff you've done and how long you've been working with someone until you are in a prep for something like this, because I completely forgot about all of that. But yeah, I would say that's probably like, I don't know, 7 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
Maybe even longer. But yeah, it's pretty much how it started.
Okay, I'm moving on to our next question from Lisa on demystifying sounds. Lisa says, let's talk about some of the new work created for All Matters Aside. Sound in your videos, such as Of a Beyond 2 or No Duty More Sacred, sometimes seems to be ambient noise from the performer's movements and the sites where they occur. Other times, for example, in Shift, Sift, Swoosh Bods, the sound manifests as something strange and perplexing. How is sound developed and constructed through your reciprocal, experimental, and creative process? And how does this relate to your notion of demystifying sound?
Yes. And so the video that Of a Beyond 2 and No Duty More Sacred is referenced, well, Of a Beyond 2, that is the video we called for us at the beginning. And No Duty More Sacred is part of that body of work where I am doing site performances. I'm doing site performances in Baltimore that have the Cockeysville Marble as part of the site. So I film in No Duty Most Sacred. We see a clip later on at my Vernon Park place. And so the sound manifests definitely in Of and Beyond 2 in No Duty in these site performances versus the one I did in the studio of Sis Fruit Spots. It's because the kind of limitation I had. Like for Sister Spots, it was in my studio. I didn't have like the funding to have yet to pay for a sound designer such as Dan. Like I remember Sister Spots, but the two clips we just played back in 2018 that I showcased in 2018 at Old Dominion University. Dan provided his service gratis for free, and I thank Dan for that. And so I didn't have a sound designer, so I was the sound designer for Sif Shoe Spots, and so it's like my technical skills. I had some experience with Adobe Sound Booth, like some experience with it, and so that piece itself is like manifests into like my kind of limitation of the budget, the project budget kind of limitations, like doing something DIY, do yourself. And so the sound, when you hear Sif Shoe Spots in full, you have a lot of layering of sound. I did add some layers for sound outside the studio, but most of the sound in that video was captured within the studio itself, which brings me to the contrast to the site performances, the film site performances that's part of Dream Beyond Philadelphia, Dream Beyond Baltimore, where I am filming Black performers touching and testing the Cockeysville Marble at the different sites. I now have a budget, like I was able to get grant or through the art residency at the Center for Art Design and Visual Culture, I was able to have funding to actually to bring in a sound designer. And so the ambient noise you hear, the sound you hear in those videos actually then score. And so what you may appear to be the sound from the outside itself is actually have been scored by Dan.
So I guess like when we talk about this like process of like demystifying sound, I guess like one of the big things to cover is like I come from a background in like cinematic sound design, in which you essentially assemble a world from the bottom up. It's very atomic. But within that world, there's a system of values that is very very different from what we attempted to achieve here, which is usually you have dialogue. It's a very vococentric art form with cinema, and you have the sound of people's clothing, and they call that Foley, and then footsteps also Foley, and then you have ambient background noise and music. With Levester, what we discussed from the beginning was that this is going to be more about a very heightened sense of material reality and being in discourse with like a historical material reality. So the first video that I ever worked on was the one that we put on first, of like the sliding and sloshing. And yes, Levester, it's absolutely right. That's not the ideal place to listen to like something like that, because synchronization in streaming is not always like right on. And that was like the main thing. It was kind of calling attention to every little detail of every small movement that occurs that you're seeing, because we're drawing attention to the importance of labor, body, material, in a lot of ways, that you're thinking of. There was a lot of this stuff that I was kind of thinking of in a sort of like dialectical material way, where you kind of invert it, and this is what you see in sound design. We had inverted that essentially, which is to call attention to every small little detail. Like Levester asked me, can you sound design 30 minutes of one shot? It's like, yeah, usually in a single shot, you would never have that much detail. You're not supposed to, when we watch something in a video or film or TV or anything like that, we definitely don't. We're not listening out to, I think, that a lot of things that we recorded, which is just every little piece of skin interacting with all the material in this environment. And yeah, it just took a lot of layering, and just I haven't seen that video in maybe 2 years, I guess, and trying to kind of recall what it was that was used, because that's one of the things that definitely is still consistent with the process of recording is the reality of sound in video is never consistent with what the truth is, let's say. Like those wet sloshing sounds, that was a combination of like water and soap on plastic with a like a fresh pumpkin in its place to just slide across, because that was just the closest thing that sold the idea of the reality of a synchronous movement with the sound that accompanies it. And yeah, so I in a lot of ways, I just want to cover, some of that stuff for this kind of demystifying the process of what we're doing and kind of the inversion that we attempted to achieve. But yeah, we can move on, I think, right?
Right. Yes.
This brings us to the last question that Lisa's prepared for today, which is a question on embodied spectatorship. Lisa says, there is a dialectic between audio and sensory experience in your work. Dan has discussed the different layers of sound that exist in the videos and how they create a, quote, built universe that viewers experience through, quote, psychological somatic processes. Can you give some examples of how this layering and universe building operates, as well as the effects that they produce in the work?
Yeah. So when I referred initially when talking to Lisa about like a dialectic that exists in sound design, it's really when I say dialectic, I mean opposing forces, and that is what you're looking for to create a sound. You know, a lot of times that's like what your eye is looking for whenever you're working. You're looking for skin against skin. You're looking for skin against a material, and that's typically what's going to create a sound, because that's usually when we experience our environments, especially as a spectator. Like when we watch this, we see something, we expect a sound, it happens. Okay, that's coming together. You know, that makes a sound. So in a lot of these, and especially in the last clip that we just watched, a lot of it is layered. It is, you know, the sound of skin on skin is the sound also of like a fresh bar of Dr. Bronner's soap, because it's very sticky and very has like a very high, you know, frequency tactile response. So it really draws a lot of attention to very minute movements. But there ended up being a request specifically from Levester within that series of videos, which was essentially, can I hear the sound of her hair leaving concrete? And so that's kind of the opposite of exactly what I just described. You know, usually you see two things, there's a sound. Things leaving, it's almost like, well, when they're separating, you unless they're wiping against each other, you're not really expecting a sound. But that's kind of when we got around to this idea of a like embodied spectatorship, because it took me a while to wrap my head around what exactly I could do to honor this request, essentially. And so I started to think, you know, in a way that is backwards, because there are sounds in here which are not something you would hear as a spectator, but there are sounds that you would identify as a spectator as being inside your body. And so when I talk about this kind of like somatic process, it was the result of asking myself that question, like, what does it sound like when your head leaves concrete? What does it sound like to have that? And it's like, well, where do you feel it when that happens? Like, well, you kind of feel it in the back of your jaw. You feel it in your teeth. You feel it very internally. So when you move your head around on concrete and you kind of hear these things inside of you, well, a spectator in a voyeuristic position, they can't hear those inside you. But you can. And when you see this happening and you witness something that is a very internalized somatic experience happening to another person, you can click with it. You know, you can very much, you embody it, you feel it. So that's really, you know, it's in any sort of collaboration, I feel like the most difficult, the most nonsensical, the thing that doesn't make that you swear you cannot reconcile, where the greatest contradiction is, that's really where I think the crux of the work is. And that was kind of my experience with this.
Yeah, and I agree. And I would just to give people some more like back view. I would give like Dana like a directive, like, hey, I would go out and just into the field, shoot the video, and specifically in like Beyond Beyond, where I'm going to these different sites in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, where the Black performers testing the Cockeysville marble. And I would edit the film together, and then as I had like the final edits, I would give them to Dan. We have this kind of reciprocal in this process. Like I would give like, hey, I want this kind of feeling. Since we've been working together, we have this language already built around, like this language already built around our kind of collaboration. And like just when I the one who kind of missing. I want this kind of embodied spectatorship. I wanted a collapse between the viewers in the screen, and which then touch on just now the idea of like you as a viewer, like you normally would hear, like you say, if I was to press my hand on my head, on my hair, and just let it go, you wouldn't hear that. But I can hear it and feel it in my body, and so to like have that where the viewers can actually hear that kind of internal sound as a viewer, like for me, it's like way to kind of collapse that, and also to introduce what Laura U. Marks, the film scholar Laura U. Marks, in the skin of film, talks about haptic vision. It's vision which you can feel. It's tactile. I wanted the viewers to have like this I'd like to say embody, but this physical and in the body moment, and it's kind of a continuation of, if you remember, the gallery onto 6 foot spots, which is more so this kind of exploration to subjectivity, like this. So having this aesthetics and within like 6 spots, we have the video of basically this interior room of 4 Black performers. We have this kind of visual of that. I kind of since like that visual, like, okay, how did I dive deep into that? And sounds kind of allows me to kind of play with the entirety of the subject, like what is to be in someone else's body and to feel what they feel, and sound allows that, and like this kind of this granular, minute scoring that's happened in the videos. And unfortunately, again, in these installations, and when you see in screens, you can hear all the rich sounds and the minute kind of scoring that happened, which is important again because I wanted to collapse the screen of viewers, so it's no longer this thing, the object you see on screen, the subject you see on screen is no longer something like I'm there, this is here. It's a kind of collision between that, a collapse of that space, and so sound allows me. Of course, installation allows me, but sound itself allows me to like reach a greater depth of that kind of collapse between the viewer and the screen.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment real quickly that, with sound design, what that, really what it is like a film theorist, Michel Schoen, always said that, that the effect is not experienced through acoustic realism. It's primarily synchrony and then verisimilitude. But as long as it's happening at the time that you see it and then you hear the sound, there's a reality. But within that separation, there's a little area and there's just a little disconnect, and that's where you can be as creative as possible. So rather than the verisimilitude be dependent on any sort of real truth, and it's often on convention entirely that we experience in it, we kind of attempted to recreate that convention, which is that if the synchrony occurs with something that is an internal sound, we can start to really make a visceral, impactful connection between the image and the spectator.
I think that is a wonderful note for us to land on here. The sort of proximities to something we can't possibly touch or feel, but sort of know it through its verisimilitude. I love this quote, Levester, from Leo Marx about this vision that you can feel. I wasn't familiar with that quote. I think the two of you have given us so much to think about today in thinking about not just sound design in a techie wonky sense, but really it's kind of the profound ideas that you both have as you collaborate on this work together. I really want to thank you both for being part of this on behalf of CADVC at UMBC. Thanks to those who joined us on our webinar live today. For those joining online today and those that are able to view this video in the future, Please do check out the many resources that associate with Levester Williams's exhibition at CADVC, including the Cockeysville to Baltimore booklet that this webinar associates with. With that, I'd like to do a virtual round of applause for our presenters today. Thank you both so much for being with us, and hope to see everyone again on our new webinar series.